Right, and didn't get it, and now it's like, well, I guess it's a good thing to get that folder.
Oh, you're used to it.
Yes.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
We'll talk later.
Thank you all for coming to our team kickoff meeting tonight. Come on, MC with us. Is that too loud? Hello to everyone in Zoom land.
Hello.
Hi. So I just want to, we have a whole new sound system in here. Many of you have been part of meetings with the new system, but for those of you who have not, just to let you know, it's very, very sensitive. So anything you say, even as a tiny little whisper, will be picked up and recorded. So FYI, and also paper shuffling and a lot of movement is a little distracting for our online guests. And everyone in Zoom, in the Zoom world, you are muted, except Sal is not, but that's okay. If you want to speak, raise your hand, or, you know, your little hand there, and we'll get you. Kim monitors the Zoom, so she'll be watching the screen. So thank you all for coming. I'm Shauna Bonchak. I know most of you. If this is your first time attending, I do see some new faces. Thank you. We are always happy to have our residents here and anyone interested in becoming part of a team. Volunteer committees are very important to us, so thank you all for your time. This is a kickoff that stems from our CIC committee, which I wasn't here at its inception, but Doug was, and it's his baby. And it really started from when he was here, the comprehensive plan, which is our guiding document, in the town was sitting on a shelf and had been for years, and nothing was being done with it. So Doug started the CIC, was it 2015, Doug, or 14? 2014. And brought in current members of boards and former members of boards and brought them together to really implement the goals of the plan. And it's actually award-winning committee and one of a kind in the state of New York. So the project teams that were invited tonight were derived from the CIC. And that would be the tree team, the history team, the conservation team, which is one of the newest entities, the affordable housing team, which is fairly new and growing every day in size, and the gateway signage team or committee. And we also invited the Parks and Rec committee and the special events committee tonight. So the goal is to have a committee member or members or team member from each of these give a brief summary of what they worked on in 2021, goals for 2022, and also to bring all of the teams together in the same room and via Zoom, because it's important to know what everyone is working on. So that's because they all kind of channel into our strategic goals for 2022, which are on these boards here. So I want to turn it over to Sarah. Did you want to start? Yeah, so Sarah is here representing, well, she's here because she's an amazing staff person and has actually staffed the CIC for, I don't even know how many years, a few years before I got here, and really has her pulse on a lot. So she is going to represent the Ag Committee, give a little summary and about where they're going and where they've been.
Yeah, because most of the time people tell me I'm not loud enough, so you're welcome. Yeah, so our Ag Committee members couldn't be here tonight, so I'm going to give you kind of a brief overview of what they've been working on and some of the things they're currently working on now. So the Ag Committee was created as a result of the Ag Enhancement Plan, which was adopted in 2016. And in March of 2017, the town board created the Ag Committee, which is made up of people who have a hand in farming locally. So they're either active farmers in the town or our community, or they may work in an industry that supports our local farmers, or have just maybe grew up in farming. So we have representation from a variety of people, but they're all interested in agriculture. So their marching orders are taken directly from the Agricultural Enhancement Plan implementation table, which is in the back of the plan. A lot of our plans have these tables that help us decide what they should work on each year. So at the end of each year, they take a look at the table, they see what actions they haven't worked on yet, and they make some goals for that year. The Ag Committee has worked on in the past goals that some of you will be familiar with. One of their main goals is protecting farmland from development to be developed for uses other than agriculture. So for example, protecting farmland from becoming a housing development. One of the ways which they work on this, and they've done this in cooperation with the Environmental Conservation Board, is working with the state's PTR program, which is a purchase of development rights, which is a grant program funded through the New York State Department of Ag and Markets, which helps the town to identify and protect parcels of land which are actively farmed, and the state supplies some funding towards it. And what the result is that an easement, a conservation easement, is placed on that property, which will protect it perpetually, forever, so it can never be developed or used for a purpose other than agriculture. The farmer is allowed to change the type of agriculture they do. They're allowed to expand if they need to, build extra barns or other buildings that support their farming, but it can't ever be sold and turned into housing. It could be sold to another farmer, but it's always going to be protected. So the Ag Committee and the ECB, for I think at least 2 or 3 rounds of this grant program, have worked together to identify potential parcels, and they rank them, choose the one that seems like it supports the town's efforts the best. It's got good soils. The farmer is committed to farming, and then the town submits those applications to the state. And we've been successful 3 times now, and we've worked with well, more than that, but since the Ag Committee's been around, and we work with the Finger Lakes Land Trust sometimes. We've worked with the Genesee Land Trust, supporting some of their applications, because in addition to municipalities, land trusts can also turn in these applications. And most recently, we've done it alone. So it's a good effort by the Ag Committee. It's working. It's not the only thing. Currently, what they're working on now is trying to find other ways that we can encourage landowners to protect their land. You can put a voluntary easement on your land, so they're working on ways to encourage that, provide information for landowners on other ways they can protect it, just give them more resources to choose to protect it on their own. We've also been working on encouraging developers to choose areas other than farmland to do their development. So some of the stuff Ag Committee works on spreads into other groups. And I know I could probably just keep talking about it, but so currently that's what the Ag Committee is working on. They've been looking at some newer methods beyond the PTR state grant program that they can use to protect more farmland, because among all the other things, that's their #1 goal. They also look at outreach, education, other resources, support, gathering knowledge to share with farmers, and then just putting the word out there and helping other people who are not farmers understand why it's important for the town. So,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Sorry, long-winded answer.
I want to bring your attention to your agenda, just so you know, on the back, the strategic goals for this year are listed. And you're going to notice that there's a common theme that more than one team, more than one committee is working on these strategic goals. I'm going to invite, and if you don't want to get up, Karen, I can bring the mic to you. Okay. So Karen is the chairperson of our affordable housing team, and which this team is very busy. and growing, and she's going to give a nice summary.
So the affordable housing team was chartered by the town board, actually in the year 2020, correct? Okay. And we actually got a team together last spring. We had our first meeting in June. It was just a planning type meeting, and the first real meeting happened in July. So we're relatively new. We have met, we are asked to bring a plan to achieve affordable housing and affordable transportation for workforce in the town of Canandaigua. And I personally am pretty passionate about it. So I hope we do go forward with it. But we have met with some developers. We have had speakers from different nonprofits who are in the affordable housing arena. We have met with the Geneva Housing Authority, whatever they call it, and we keep having speakers who have really compelling stories to tell and compelling information. We're currently looking at putting together a roadmap, a plan on how we're going to move forward and exactly which issues we're going to address. We have targeted a market, and my co-chair, Matt Horn, is the one that can really give you the numbers. I'm not good with that. But we do have a target market, and just in case you think that there is no need for affordable housing in the town of Canandaigua, we have obtained the waiting lists on the affordable housing already in the town of Canandaigua, and it's well in the 3 figures. So it's well over 100 figures, 100 people, and there's more. And I personally am on an Ontario County Economic Development Board, and I hear at our monthly meeting that businesses who want to move to the town of Canandaigua, who want to move to Ontario County, are insisting on having affordable housing for their workforce. And lately, in the past 4 or 5 months, I keep hearing at these meetings that they need affordable transportation or just transportation. So it's here in the town of Canandaigua. It is in Ontario County. We are currently in the process of trying to push to have the meeting be countywide, the team be countywide, and we're in the process of contacting different town supervisors throughout Ontario County. How long that'll take, I don't know. So, and I don't know if it'll happen. But that's where we are right now. I invite anyone who's interested to come to our meetings. We meet the third Friday of every month at 1 o'clock. And if you're interested, just shoot an email to Sarah Reynolds at the town of Canandaigua. Her email address is on the town website, and she'll put you on the list, and you will receive the agenda and get an email and a Zoom invitation if you choose to attend via Zoom. We do meet in person also. So,
thank you, Karen. I'm going to move to gateway signage. So I want to acknowledge Sal, who is on the gateway signage team, as well as Oksana, who's going to give us a little summary. Lois is here as well. But
no, she's on Zoom.
Right, yeah, she's here.
Yes, we is. Okay, the Gateway Signage Committee. The Gateway Signage Committee was formed 2 years ago, but because of the pandemic, we didn't do any work until 2021. So it was formed to design and implement the placing of signage at our gateway areas to welcome visitors to the town of Canandaigua. We met twice a month via Zoom to identify and prioritize the town's gateways, solicit quotes from vendors, and finally we chose Sign Language, a company from Perry, New York, to facilitate this project. And
It's here.
it's over there. And that is the sign that we came up with. Anyway, the stressful but fun part was the design stage. How do you choose one element that would project an image of the town? That work went on for several months, and we chose the lake as one of the most important elements. Finally, we decided on a photo taken from Ananda Park that showed the beautiful vista of the lake and hills looking south. We worked with a designer from Sign Language who incorporated the exact image from that photo into a graphic that would be placed on every sign in the town. We are very happy with the design, and I hope all of you that are here think it is great, just like we do. And we're happy to have accomplished this signage endeavor in less than 1 year. Presentation of the design to the town board was approved and a contract was signed for producing the signage. The signs now are done, and we are waiting for good weather to start the construction of placing the signs. And I hope Jim Fletcher will help us with that endeavor.
I'm sure we will.
He's a great guy. He helps with everything. With that, the committee has accomplished their task. It was a remarkable piece of work by committee members that were committed and gave of their time to produce a product that they could be proud of. And I have to say, we all enjoyed the camaraderie, even if it was over Zoom during the worst time of the pandemic. I just want to thank all our team members and the town board for approving our work. At this time, I don't know if the CIC and the Gateway Signage Committee, if we're done with our task, but if the CIC wants us to continue with another project, then they'll have to let us know. But if we do and you want to join our team, we're a great bunch of people and we are fun and we would love to have you.
Thank you. While you're up there,
Oh, I'll have to grab my other.
your special events committee. Thank you, Oksana.
Oksana wears many hats.
She is valued. Thank you.
You guys just keep twisting my arm. Okay, special events. Now, this committee is the most fun. So if you would like to join, we would love to have you.
Are you on the special?
Okay, since we didn't have any events last year and only had one event in the previous year in 2020, I thought I would just give you a little overview what we have done from the inception of the committee. It won't be too long.
Okay.
I'll read it quickly. The Special Events Committee was organized initially in 2016 to commemorate the 25th anniversary of the town of Canandaigua. The 4th of July parade was our focus. We had a steamboat paddle wheel float build called the Lady of the Lake, which was pulled by an antique farm-all tractor, and we received the Most Outstanding Float Award. In 2017, we organized a square dance at the Cheshire Fire Hall with over 100 people in attendance. We also participated in the Ontario County Fair with several vignettes of the town and antique farm equipment on loan from the Granger Homestead, which the highway department had to move everything on like the flatbed trucks and then get it back, with the people at Granger really being nervous. 2017 was also the first introduction of an event called Halloween at Ononda. It was extremely well received by families and the organizations that participated. In 2018, we organized another square dance, participated at the Ontario County Fair, and held Halloween at Ononda, with attendance just exploding as a main event for families. We also worked very hard to have a float at the 4th of July parade. Since it was the 100th anniversary of the first airmail flight in 1918 and the 80th anniversary for the first airmail flight from Canandaigua to Rochester in 1938, we had a facsimile built of the Curtiss JN-4 Jenny plane. That original plane was built in 1915 by the Curtiss Aeroplane Company of Hammondsport, New York. The Jenny was pulled by the antique Farmall tractor, and we won the first place trophy again. After the new highway facility was built, the events team went to work on having the first ever town open house to feature the facility and all the town committees with displays of their work. It was an informative event and picnic that was attended by many people and businesses. In 2019, it was the 30th anniversary of Ononda Park. The 4th of July parade float showed a series of activities at Ononda Park against a large background of a scene of Canandaigua Lake. Again, it won first place. We just keep racking up the trophies. The commemoration of the anniversary was held at Ononda Park with representatives from New York State and community-wide leaders. We held a picnic and had displays going back to the history of when Ononda was a girls' camp. That fall, Halloween at Ononda had almost 800 people attending. The events team also organized the dedication of the town's newest park, Miller Park. 2020 was a challenging year, with the pandemic starting to influence many events. The only event we were able to hold was a special retirement reception for elected officials and volunteer chairs of several committees, thanking them for their work and many years of service to the town. All other events were canceled that year, as well as in 2021. We come to 2022, and hopefully we will be able to have some of these events. Ononda Park acquisition is one of the events where New York State will forward the ownership of the lakefront to the town. We are just now planning an event at all our parks and city parks with the city in June. So we will be actually talking to the Parks Committee about that. Motion Junction Park at Outhouse West, we will have a ribbon cutting, and we don't know when that will be yet. 4th of July parade, we will probably do something. We will have Halloween at Ononda. And Parks and Rec, they will have one movie night and 2 music nights. Then we were planning a Winterfest, but that never happened this year. So we're moving that to 2023. And then hopefully we will have a square dancing event at the Civic Center in 2023. Because we have to kind of figure out dates when there is no ice, unless everyone wants to skate instead of square dance. Anyway, if you're creative, fun-loving, and willing to get your hands dirty, this is a great committee to join. And I just want to say that besides the events committee, when we have an event, the Parks and Rec Committee helps, the Highway Department helps, and all of the staff at Town Hall. And it is just wonderful to come together and make the event possible. So thank you.
Thank you, Oksana. Mark, would you be able to come up
Sure.
now? Mark represents the Parks and Rec Committee.
Aaron, unless you want to talk again.
No, you can.
Thank you.
I'll talk way too loud. Jared will tell you I talk too loud at school too, so. Dave Sauter's also here from Parks and Rec, as well as Karen Parkhurst. So along with Dan Napton and Stephanie Coons make up our committee right now. So the Parks and Rec Committee is an advisory board to the town, advisory committee to the town board. So, you know, we look at things like the master plan and we make recommendations about things that, you know, we see that improvements maybe for the parks or additions to the parks. We work with Lindsay for the recreation programming, things like that, make suggestions. So I wrote right at the top of my little list of important things for 2021 was the town hired Lindsay. So, you know, that really worked out. I think she's got her hands full. There's a lot that Lindsay's doing now that's really helpful to Parks and Recs. So as you look at what was accomplished in the town of Canandaigua with parks for 2021, it's hard to miss to drive through the town and not see Outhouse West as you drive by. And the work that's being done there at Motion Junction is amazing. And, you know, effort led by Mike Bentley and Doug working along. And we're going to keep all along thanking the Highway Department here again tonight for different things that they've done. But the work that they've played and the role that they've had at Motion Junction really is what has made it, you know, as incredible as it is here to drive by when it's not even finished yet, to look at that and see what they've done there. So, you know, thank you to the Highway Department and Doug and Mike and everybody for that. Across the street, also the addition of the new highway ship, or I'm sorry, the new pirate ship, which again was put in by the Highway Department working with the town recreation staff. And the Highway Department also worked on the Auburn Trail. If you notice behind the Civic Center now, there's a little extension of the Auburn Trail that leads from Outhouse Park and it heads towards County Road 30. So again, those are some things that were accomplished this last year. So, you know, again, thank you to the Highway Department for working on that. We did have our rain shortened concert at Outhouse Park last year with the food trucks and the ice cream truck and the band. I think, what did we get, 3 songs or 4 songs before we had the thunder and the lightning and one of the worst storms of the winter, or of the summer. And I think Doug showed up worried about the number of cars that were blocking Outhouse Road down there. So, but we built it and they came, so it worked out pretty good. So hopefully this year will be a repeat of the crowd we had. The other thing that we've been happy about is the new reservation system here at the town. So it gives us the ability to track, you know, the rentals and gives us a better picture of what's happening and what buildings are being used. So to have that, you know, at our disposal to see maybe where should we focus some more efforts based on what the residents are using has been helpful. We've added some QR code signs at the parks. I don't know if any of you have seen those, but use your phone and you can send a review straight to a Google Map site. And when you look at any of our town parks, or some of our town parks, now we don't have them up at all the parks, you have the ability to leave a review. How was your visit today? So we can go back in and we can look at that information and say, boy, there's a lot of people using the park, or, you know, somebody might point out something that needs attention, and we can use that kind of as an immediate feedback. So we also worked with the ordinance committee this year to review and to rewrite the Parks and Rec section of the code. So that was a good update and really an updating that was needed. Going back here to Lindsay, the work that Lindsay has done, she really is in charge of the general upkeep and the maintenance at all the parks for us. So, we'll come together for our meetings and pass along to Lindsay the little things that we've seen, but Lindsay's out there, she's at the park, she's looking at things, and if we've seen it, she's already seen it 4 or 5 times. So she's done a great job with identifying, the improvements that are needed. She's always referring back to the park master plan and, channeling the resources towards meeting the goals in the park master plan. So the big focus from Lindsay's group from the maintenance point was improving the accessibility to the various buildings and the cabins, especially down at Ononda. She improved the trails up at Blue Heron Park. So they regraded all those and they added a new trail to be able to walk from the parking lot, and the parking lots were paved, I'm assuming again by the highway department, but so those are the things really Lindsay was focused on with the general upkeep and the maintenance. On the recreation side of programming, this past year, we worked with the city to run a joint summer program, and that joint summer program brought together the kids from both the city and the town. So it was one program that all the kids were able to attend together. And the same program, the recreation programming, Karen, you can speak maybe a little bit to the senior programming that we've added and worked with the city. So we had a weekly or a Thursday recreation program, a senior social hour at Outhouse Park through part of the year. And also that transformed into a senior social hour with Quail Summit. So there are programs now that are once a week, twice a month with Quail Summit that has been established as part of the recreation programming. More recently, our last couple of meetings, we met with the history team. Sarah Linda came down and presented the work that they'd done. There's the kiosk just across the road at Ononda, which looking Sarah Linda after our meeting, I think some of those things are 30 or 40 years old, the displays that are down there now. So Sarah Linda's group came up with some information on park history, some natural history, and also she worked with people at the county to come up with a new trail map for the upper trails at Ononda. So very much needed, and hopefully that's going to transfer into some electronic copies and things that can be used a lot easier down at Ononda. Looking forward to this year for 2022. Again, we're going to continue with the work on the upkeep and the maintenance of all the parks. We're looking really at trying to get a better feel with all the uptown work being done for Blue Heron Park. We're not looking to rush in, and we want to kind of see what's going to shake out with development at Blue Heron before we put a lot of resources in up at Blue Heron Park. But other big items here, Outhouse Park is going to be a big focus, again, to finish up at Motion Junction. So that I think is great as what's been there. I think there's much more coming, and I think there's going to be a lot of work and a lot of focus there throughout the summer. The anticipated opening, I think, was Memorial Day time, Doug, was what they were hoping for, late May. Also, Lindsay's crew is working to pave the walking trails at Outhouse. Again, there's some areas that are kind of steep and get rutted pretty easy with the water and the things at Outhouse Park. Our work, and Oksana mentioned at Outhouse, we're going to hold 2 summer concerts this year. So hopefully the rain doesn't come, and we'll have the food trucks. We're lighting those up now. But also, before COVID, we had our first movie night with some bounce houses, and then food trucks came, and the children could use the bounce houses and then watch the movie at night. So hopefully that's as big a success this year as it was last year. We had a meeting with MRB, and they presented some work that they've done on improvements for the uplands at Ononda. So that's going to be really a big focus for us over the course of the next year or so, is looking at improvements to accessibility, parking improvements, possible cabin additions and improvements, maybe adding a few tent sites, and some trail improvements down at Ononda. So we've also worked with some of the local property owners down there to identify the boundaries, and there's been some concerns with trespassers from the park onto some private land. So we've worked and continue to work with Lindsay on identifying those borders better. As far as trails, we are continuing to work and have a planning and design work taking place on the Auburn Trail. Sarah's doing a lot of the work with Fisher Associates. So looking to extend the section of the Auburn Trail from Farmington down along Brickyard Road and ultimately connect with Outhouse Park. So you can hop on the Auburn Trail at Outhouse Park and end up, Dave, how far can you ride your bike on Auburn Trail? So
You can go to Buffalo.
yeah, so it'd be great to make that connection. And you know, any of you that were on the Zoom the other night for the work with the Fisher Associates, it's a work in progress and a lot of hurdles to overcome. But Sarah keeps plugging away, and thank you for all that work. So also hoping to get the highway department to look at the section of the Outhouse Trail that we can do a little bit locally. We've got the berm, the stormwater berm from County Road 30 over to Brickyard Road. So ultimately the plan's going to be to use that as part of the trail across the top of that berm. So, you know, that'll be our little connector. And even now, if we could leave Outhouse and get over to Brickyard, that's, you know, a start in the right direction. Other work that we've looked at in dealing with the Pierce Brook land over by Miller Park is a connection between the trails that they're going to have as part of their development over there, crossing the road and using the trails at Miller Park. So that would expand that system of trails. Recreation just underway today. The city actually, Heather from the city that is coordinating the programming put out her brochure for recreation programming for this year. But again, it'll be another year of joint programming between the city and the town as far as the recreation programming, adding to the senior programming. And the other thing from our point of view is we're hoping one of our priority items, we didn't make the chart, but as a committee, we really see the need of somebody dedicated to the recreation programming. As great as Lindsay is, you know, she's wearing so many hats that our hope would be, you know, that we could keep pushing towards the idea of having somebody dedicated with a background in recreational programming, you know, to expand the different programmings that we do have. So, and I'm sure I've left out a lot of things. Doug, you've been really helpful with parks this year. I don't know if there's any other things that, seems like every time we speak, you've got 5 new things that have come up that you're excited to talk about. So good. So.
Thank you, Mark.
Yep, thank you.
Really appreciate that. Was great.
Conservation easement team. I'm gonna give this to Doug.
If you want to. So, good evening, everybody. You know, just sitting there listening to everybody. I'm gonna step over here so they can also see me on the camera. But you know, it's so awesome. The people, the volunteers that we have. I know there are 28 people represented here this evening, either in person or by Zoom, and then we have about 100 volunteers, and just our community is so giving of their time for all of these projects, and it's just so exciting. I do want to recognize some of our elected officials that are here this evening that we haven't recognized yet. We have Town Supervisor Jared Simpson with us, Deputy Town Supervisor Terry Finelli, and President of the Local Development Corporation, Terry Finelli. A few other hats there too. We've got Adeline Rudolph, one of our town board members, and we've recognized Jim at least a dozen times. But so much of everything is so related. We talk about the Auburn Trail and we talk about some of that stuff. Well, truthfully, some of that stuff doesn't happen without the planning board, and a lot of the stuff doesn't happen without the highway. And so many of these projects and these different goals that we work on are overlapping. Even the 5 goals. What goal number 5 there, Jim? Put you on the spot. Instruct or invest in construction of roads, sidewalks, and bike lanes, complete streets. But then that relates back to Parks and Rec and everything else. I mean, there's so many of our things. And when we talk about affordable housing, I was listening to Karen. So much of even affordable housing is about quality of life and the building of the culture and the community and really sharing of the aspects in that. And then you factor in transportation relates to affordable housing. So, okay. I want to talk to you about, I'll keep it short, conservation. So in 2020, right before COVID, we launched a conservation team that really was talking about conservation and what does conservation in the town of Canandaigua mean. And there were two really primary outcomes of some of those very first meetings. Number one, we needed to look at the town code relative to conservation subdivision, because the way it was described was it was a get out of jail free card for developers and it needed to immediately be addressed. Number two was conservation programs. So we started with the first, conservation subdivision. Happy to report that the town board of the town of Canandaigua adopted new conservation subdivision regulations in the fall maybe of 21. I think it took with COVID and everything else, we got a little bit delayed, but I think it was the fall of 21. That's all now in place, as well as even taking it a step further with the scenic view shed overlay and some other aspects relative to the code. Step two is to go back to the original team and to really talk about conservation and what is conservation. I think we all have ideas about what is conservation to you. Jared, what's conservation to you? Put you on the spot.
Green space.
Green space, perfect. Mark, what's conservation to you?
Conserving.
Conserving, okay. Parks and Rec, maybe. Open spaces.
The green space.
The green space. Adeline, what's conservation to you?
Lake protection.
Lake protection. Conservation can be lots of stuff. Karen, what's?
It's planning.
Planning. Great answer. Great answer. The conservation could be so many different things. So when we really start to talk about conservation, there's so many different aspects. If you could advance that for me to the next slide. So a couple of weeks ago, Sean asked me to do a presentation to our Citizens Implementation Committee about conservation. And here's some of the things that, you can talk about: quality of life, all of the different things that we were talking about, open space, recreation, economic prosperity, because that really factors into quality of life. Conservation is economic development. Canandaigua Lake, streams, we mentioned that, ecosystems, wildlife, prime soils, all the things that Sarah was talking about relative to the agriculture. That's all some of the reasons why we do conservation, and we talk about conservation as well as the historical, cultural, and heritage aspects of the town of Canandaigua, which is very steep in history. If you can go to the next slide for me. So then we look at, okay, the purposes. So that original team I talked about, the original purpose of that, and that originally comprehensive plan from 2011 really talked about conserving and maintaining the land that provides critical open space and scenic resources, and then it talks about some of the programs. Then we kind of took that a step further, and there's been any number of folks. Tom Schwartz has led this effort with Ryan Stachek for many, many years, where they worked on conservation, and there were a lot of volunteers. I think at one point our conservation team had 30 or 40 different people on it, and they were looking at all kinds of different things, whether it was tax abatements. It was just tons and tons of resources that they really dug into, and a lot of that information is actually still on our website today. And you'd start talking about that. And if you can go to the next slide for me. And then we started looking at, okay, well, we have some fantastic resources in the town of Canandaigua. And so over the last couple of years, with the support of the town board, we were actually able to document a lot of our conservation things that we do have. Sarah mentioned the agriculture enhancement plan. And we also have an open space conservation and scenic views master plan that has tons of information on it. If you can go to the next slide for me. We are one of the few municipalities that I know of where we can pretty much tell you every single parcel in the town of Canandaigua has a parcel rating, whether for conservation, whether for agricultural protection, whether it's our strategic farmland protection area, which is the area in the red, the Paddleford Brook Greenway. And we worked very, very hard. Sarah was talking about the PTR program. We're one of only 3 municipalities in the state of New York where we've received these awards in the last round for the PTR programs. And to date, we've preserved over 2,000 acres in that Paddleford Brook Greenway specifically. More than 3,000 acres townwide, I believe, is the number. But you can see even here, just looking at this map, we can point out the soils of prime farmland if drained, and soils of statewide importance. If you can go to the next slide for me. And then we even have all things like the strategic forest protection area that you see here on the screen. That's all been mapped with the different types of hardwoods. And we have the scenic view shed and the brand new scenic view shed overlay. So we have a lot of natural resources, if you can go to the next slide for me, for us to be proud of, and that we really want to talk about. So then we talk about, okay, conservation, the team and some of the issues, right? So there's different things that we could do. We can look at programming, we can look at conservation subdivision from a regulatory aspect, right? And so I mentioned this earlier, but local law number 8 of 2021 enabled us to have the conservation subdivision regulations changed so that we actually have that in place now. With local law number 12 of 2021, we put the scenic viewshed overlay. So we've made some progress there. There's been some discussion with the ag team. The ag team continues to discuss some different aspects relative to an agriculture protection overlay. There's still an opportunity there. But the other side of the chart here is the programming side, and that's where we need help. And if you can go to the next slide. The reason we need help is because it gets complicated very, very fast. When you're looking at this slide here, and right at the top it says Town of Canandaigua Conservation Programs, and there's basically two types of programming. You can either have easements or you can hold land in fee title, meaning that an entity can have it. Either way, you can have conservation on those. When we talk about fee title, we talk about private and public fee title, ownership of the land. Public land owned by the Town of Canandaigua is protected. It's conserved. So we have parks, we have open space, we have parcels that the Town of Canandaigua owns. Okay, nobody from the CIC give this away, but any idea how many parcels the Town of Canandaigua owns? Throw some numbers out. I did this with the CIC. Just take a wild guess. Just guess. Big, small, little. Take a guess.
52.
52. Terry, take a guess. 70. Adeline.
30.
We put the town board members on the spot. The grand winner is Terry. It's at 72. We'll give you a candy bar later, Terry. So, but 72. But some of those are very small pieces. Some of those are like pump stations. You know, don't think that those are 72 farm fields all over the Town of Canandaigua. Some of those are very small. Some of them are larger. One of the largest parcels that the Town of Canandaigua owns is actually open space that's right out behind the property here. And that is currently farmed. That's Buffalo Street Extension. But then, so that's publicly owned fee title property that we're talking about. And then there's privately owned fee title property. For instance, I'll give you an example. We partnered a few years ago. Town of Canandaigua invested $100,000 with Finger Lakes Land Trust in the creation of the Vista project. Okay, so that's a privately held fee title example that land is now conserved. The land trust is the owner of it. We have I don't remember it. It's in perpetuity, I think, agreement, or at least there's a very long time period associated. But we have a written agreement with Finger Lakes Land Trust to make sure that that's available to the residents in the Canandaigua communities. So then you have any number of land trusts, like for instance, Finger Lakes Land Trust, Ducks Unlimited, Genesee Land Trust, Nature Conservancy. There's many others that actually own property in the Town of Canandaigua. Yes, Ducks Unlimited owns property in the Town of Canandaigua. Then you have the other side of the spectrum, easements, private and public easements. When we talk about public easements, that's some of the stuff that Sarah was talking about, like the PTR programs, there's the TDR programs, there's town programs, there's land banks, there's any number of federal, state programs. And then on the private side, you have volunteer protection. There's some land down near Black Point in the Town of Canandaigua off of Coy Road that is in private conservation easements. There are a number of land trusts. There's PDR programs that we do with the land trust. So there's any number of these combinations that you can look at when you're talking about conservation. And then there's got to be incentives, right? Why would somebody want to put land in? Quite often, in the PDR program that Sarah was talking about, the incentive is because that the landowner, yes, they do get some money, but that they want to see their land protected. And therefore giving a considerable percentage of the value of their land. They actually forgive that. So they extinguish those development rights. So in that example of the PDR program with the state, the state will fund 75% of the development rights. The landowner essentially forgives the other 25% and donates the other 25% back to the Town of Canandaigua, is essentially what we had happen recently with the Purdy PDR that we did. The federal program only funds at 50%. So again, the landowner is asked to contribute 50%. In some cases, the landowners aren't willing to do that, and so those don't move forward. So those are all the types of things that we talk about when we talk about those public PDR programs. There's also TDR, there's land banks, there's the land trust, the private easements. There's any number of different incentives. You can look at tax credits. The state actually does provide, by 2000, a law that was passed in 2016 by the state of New York, you can get a 25% tax credit up to $5,000 if your land goes into some sort of a conservation program. So that's available. There's any number of different local recognition programs and those types of things. So there's a lot of tools in the toolbox, but where we're at is we need to invest some time and energy in seeing what are the options that make the most sense for the town of Canandaigua. And that's kind of where we're coming to you and saying, hey, if you're interested in learning more and working with us on this, it's an exciting time. We talk about conservation stuff. So, Sean, I'll turn this back over to you. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. I am going to invite Sarah Linda up, or I can bring the microphone to you if you'd like. Sarah Linda is on our history team and is a longtime resident of the town.
Well, this one actually is going to be short compared to most of the presentations. I'm just going to tell you what the history team has been up to and what we expect to see in the next year. History team has got about 10 members now. One of them is our new town historian, so that's been a new development in the past year, and a certain amount of the function of the history team is to support the town historian and work with him on various projects that he might be asking for help on. The overall goals of the history team, which was established, I believe, 5 years ago, with the goals there were twofold goals. One was education, to publicize the history of the town of Canandaigua, to bring more public attention to our history. The second one was preservation and protection of historic resources in the town, and that's primarily the buildings, but historic resources of all sorts. And in the comprehensive plan that was completed in the last year, there was a third goal that was added, promote awareness of the Native American heritage. That's one we haven't really worked on much, but that's in there now. So over the last year, 2021, which kind of extended from 2020 because with COVID, things got put on hold to a certain extent in 2020 and continued last year. But I'll deal with the two separate goals. The education goal, the principal thing that we do on an ongoing basis is to write articles for the town newsletter. So at every one of the monthly newsletters, there's something in there from the history team, and they range all over the place. And sometimes there also are history-related articles from the town historian himself. So you know, we're doing our best to sort of put local history in the public eye, and that's a good way to do it. A second one we've been working on for a few years, and it finally has come to fruition, is a display in the town hall. We've done a few other displays. The steamboat photographs is one of them we did several years ago. But one we've been working on is to reproduce the historic maps of the town at full size so that people can look at them, and they're in a series so that you can go from one map to the next and trace how your particular neighborhood developed, the roads, the buildings, and so on. So those were just installed within the last couple of weeks, and they are in the corridor. If you go straight out here and you keep going down towards the Oriana room, these 6 maps are on the wall there, and have a look at them. They look great. So the other thing we had planned to do in 2021, or we had hoped to do, was another public program. At the conclusion of the first phase of our historic resources survey, we did a public program in Cheshire that was very well attended. There were about 80 people there, and the consultant who worked on that first phase presented, you know, she gave kind of a summary and slideshow about the history of the town of Canandaigua, and I think everybody enjoyed it very much. That survey project was a 2-phase thing, and that was the conclusion of phase 1, which was a sort of a background, you know, history statement, context statement about how the town developed. The second phase of it, we had hoped to do a year earlier, but it would, with COVID and everything, it kind of got delayed for a year. So anyway, that is now underway, and we hope to do a similar public program at the conclusion of part 2. So that will be another public program, and maybe we'll get the special events committee to help us. On the protection and preservation goal, there really are 2 things that we've been doing on an ongoing basis. One is documentation of historic properties that are faced with demolition prior to demolition. Over the course of the last 2 years, or the first 2 years of this program, we did that on 6 buildings. And in 2021, we did an additional 3 buildings. And that involves getting into the building, taking interior and exterior photographs, and putting together a file. It's just an electronic file of documents, plans, the photographs, a brief summary of the history of the site, as much as we can find out about it. And then that is placed in the files of the development office, but also a copy is given to Ontario County Historical Society, which is the place really future researchers who may be interested in these buildings would probably think first to look for it. So that's something that we're continuing to do. And we know of a couple this year that we're expecting to do documentation as well. Probably, we hope that this doesn't happen, but when it does, at least it's better to record the information before the building disappears. The other ongoing protection and preservation activity has to do with the town cemeteries. A couple of years ago, we helped the town historian with a project involving Hun Cemetery, where there was some physical work done, creating a fence around it, and we helped him to create a good usable map of the grave sites and create a printed brochure that had the map and the list of graves on it. And then we helped him to put together a public program of a rededication of that cemetery. That was very well received. We worked with the DAR on it, and that's a group that's very active, working through the Ontario County Historical Society, and has been doing this for decades. I mean, they're really the main repository of cemetery information. But we thought that was a very worthwhile project and decided to continue that with some of the other town cemeteries with similar activities, documenting exactly where people were, where the stones were, who it was, and coming up with a good map and a good list. So Academy Cemetery is the one that we selected to be the next location for that. And the history team, and particularly 2 of the members, Richard and Donna West, have kind of taken the lead on both of these projects in creating the map. But the rest of us have gone out there and helped them with the, row by row inventory of who's where. And we hope to continue that this year. I'm not sure I can predict that it'll be finished this year, because that's quite a bit bigger cemetery. That's one of the biggest ones. It's got over 600 graves, as opposed to about 175 in Hun Cemetery. So that's a bigger project. But another outgrowth of this, and as you know, Leaf, our new town historian, has a particular interest in cemeteries himself, and has raised some questions about maintenance of the gravestones and sort of general conditions in the cemeteries. And we have kind of helped him to try to shape recommendations for how to really keep how to address the deterioration where it has happened for the gravestones in the town-owned cemeteries. He has made a suggestion about cemetery management and talked with the ordinance committee about it, and we will continue to be involved in that with trying to come up with sensible recommendations for best practices in taking care of municipal cemeteries. So for 2022, the education goal, we're going to continue to do that with our monthly newsletters. We're going to try to do a series focusing on the story of particular properties, homes, and barns also, because as you know, there is a lot of information collected about barns in the town, and we have a fabulous collection of barns, and we'd like to see them preserved. So there are going to be some stories on barns as well as houses. Mark mentioned the Ononda Park kiosk. That's going to be an education project where, as he mentioned, there are 3 existing panels on the kiosk that's right across the street from the main entrance to Ononda Park. And we're hoping to replace those with one map, one panel that describes the natural history of the park, and one panel that describes the human history of the park, in particular Camp Ononda. That's a cooperative project. The Environmental Conservation Board and the Parks Department have each agreed to pay for 1/3 of it, and the history team is going to pay for 1/3 of it. And we are hoping to get that up by sometime by summer of 2022. So, and that has been an interesting project because we've tried to follow up on we've had a lot of discussion about delivering information about town history in digital format, because so many people get their information over the computer or over their phone. And in this case, it seemed like it would make a lot of sense, since we're going to have a good, accurate trail map for the upland trails, to try to come up with a system where people could download that map to their phone, and then as they're hiking on the upland trails, they could actually see where they are, so they're not so likely to get lost. It can be a little confusing up there the first few times you've been there. And also so that they could get some help in trying to identify and understand what they're looking at. So we're hoping to have these QR codes on the panels, and also on at various other places around the park, so that you can, shine your phone at the QR code and then get information about tree identification or wildflower identification or fossils, or tracking animals in the snow, that sort of thing that would be very helpful to somebody who's out on the trail. This is all kind of new to us. The history team members are generally not terribly savvy in the digital area, and so we're learning as we go. But I think once this could be a prototype that could be used for other parks or other programs also, assuming we can pull it off. So that, and then the third thing in the education, it has to do with our historic resources survey. So last year we did apply, or the town applied for phase 2 of our historic resources survey. We got a grant from the Preservation League of New York State for about $15,000, or 80% of the project cost. Our consultant, Bureau Architecture, had a staffing change and has subcontracted some of the work to the Landmark Society. But that work is going to be, they've made a start on it. They've kind of taken a hiatus during the winter when it's not so easy to see things driving around. But they will be back on the job on the survey in, as soon as the snow disappears. And again, we'll be trying to, similar project to the way phase 1, or similar time frame to the way phase 1 worked out, a draft report towards summer, early summer maybe, and then a final report, and hopefully public presentation late summer, August, September timeframe. So on the preservation goal, we will continue with documenting buildings that, historic structures that have to come down. That will be assisted by the phase 2 report, which will actually be, the main content of that report is going to be a list of properties that are historically significant in the town of Canandaigua. There'll be a little paragraph about each one saying a little bit of the history, why it's significant. There'll be a photograph of it. There'll be maps that are tied in with the Encore system, so that it'll be pretty easy to look. For instance, with the development office, if somebody comes in with a project, they'll be able to quickly look at a map and see, is there an existing historic structure on that, or is the neighbor a historic structure, or just where does it fit in terms of town history? We're going to continue our work on the Academy Cemetery, and hopefully on with other cemeteries, and work with the Ordinance Committee on trying to, do our best to address the places where our cemetery stones are sort of, how would you put it, disintegrating. And having been around for 5 years, the history team, we've thought it would be a good idea for us to have a kind of a long-term planning sessions, just to, kind of talk in general terms about where we've been, what we'd like to do, how the committee works. Do we need different people? We've had a lot of discussions about things like getting more younger people involved, tying closer with the schools, the Native American aspect of it. I mean, these are all things that we sort of think are good ideas, but we don't exactly know how to go about it. So if anybody has ideas along those lines, let us know.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great.
Thank you, Sarah Linda. Dennis, I'm going to turn it over to you for the tree team. Dennis is online.
All right. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
It was cooler down here today. It was only 72.
Thanks, Dennis.
But I only have another week left, so I hope you're going to start having some nice weather up there. The tree team, we're a small group, but the individuals are talented, they're knowledgeable, they're dedicated. Matter of fact, they've taught me an awful lot. In 2021, we had an Arbor Day activity. We met with the city tree team a couple of times. And we also spent most of the year visiting the 7 cemeteries, the parks, and town hall. We made comments about the condition of trees at all those locations. We made suggestions as to removing some of them, treating some of the trees, or adding trees. We gave those reports to Lindsay, and she shared those with her staff. And as already been stated, Lindsay is absolutely wonderful, great addition to the Parks and Recreation. For 2022, we are going to plan an Arbor Day activity, have one again as we did in 2021. We will continue to meet with the City Tree Committee. We also plan on visiting the same locations again, make suggestions as to what needs to be done as far as the trees are concerned. We want to develop a list of trees that the town residents could plant on their property, and make comments about the type of tree, how to treat the trees, why those are good trees to have on your property. Dan Marion is planning to have a work session with the park staff and any other interested people on how to prune trees, and that will be sometime in early spring. We also hope to start to make a list of historical trees in the town. Our meetings are the second Monday of each month. The next one will be on March 14th at 6 o'clock at Richard Outhouse Park at the building there. We could use some more members, so if anyone's interested, let Sarah or someone else in the town know. So that's all I have, kind of short and sweet, but I don't know if you have any questions or not.
Does anyone have questions for Dennis?
Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you, Dennis.
You're welcome.
Sorry it was so chilly down there today.
I know. I had a sweatshirt on in the morning.
Oh, wow, we feel really bad for you. So I guess in summary, we have a lot of very valuable teams and people that care about the goals and objectives and really our community. And we're really happy that you're here and would love additional involvement. I wanted to give Jared, put you on the spot, a second to speak if you wanted to.
Sure. Never had a microphone I want to run away from. I like this guy.
This is nice. You can walk around with it too. I like that.
Yeah.
Pardon the gate, that's a long story. But I
I just want to take a minute. Thank you, Shauna, for putting this together. And for everyone for their input, everybody who is here virtually and here in person, all the town staff, all the volunteers, everyone who puts their heart and effort into all of these programs. Because without all of these programs, think of where we would be if we didn't have all these people putting in the time and effort, all of you putting in the time and effort to push these things forward, things that are near and dear to your heart. I would encourage anyone who is not currently, if you're here and you're not currently on one of these committees or teams, find your passion, get involved, look to see what you can do, because this is really what pushes the town forward. We wouldn't have the parks that we have without groups like this. We wouldn't have the historic preservation without the groups that we have like this. We wouldn't have the events to be proud of without groups like this. And the staff members and Shauna for volunteering. I heard she ran down to Sarah's office and she's like, I want to be in charge of everything and run this meeting tonight. You cannot do it anymore. It's all mine. That's what I heard. That's the feedback I was getting, because it's a lot to manage. There's a lot that goes on and there's a lot that happens. And I'm just beginning to, break the surface of everything that goes on. And in the time here, I've truly appreciated seeing everybody and what you've done. And I look forward to the next year and everything that can be accomplished there. And I took a lot less time than Mark did.
Does anyone else have anything they want to say, share? No? Okay, well, it's 7:45, so I think, yep, Sarah wants to say something.
I know we already said this, but I just thought it was worth mentioning again. These are all volunteers. These people are doing this because they want to make the town a better place to live, work, and play. They're doing this on their own time. There's no money involved. It's just because they want to make it a better place. And I don't know. Thank you so much. And as a staff member, it makes our job easier. It makes me more proud to work here, knowing that I'm serving the residents who care so much. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Oh, Karen's gonna share.
I want to say something about the staff. I'm on several of these committees, and I come in and visit the office occasionally. But without exception, everyone here is accessible. I have personal cell phone numbers. I have Jim Fletcher's personal cell phone number.
Oh, we all do.
But I can call here and I can get any one of these people on the phone, and they're all willing to help and all willing to talk to me and have answers for my questions. And that is without exception. There has been no one that has shied away from Karen Parkhurst calling in, although I fully expect that to happen in the future.
Anyone else?
Speaking of
Here.
Jim Fletcher here, I know some of us know that Jim has recently received an award, the Professional of the Year.
Yes, he did.
I can't remember the organization, Jim.
It's the AWP, American Public Works Association.
Yeah, Jim is recognized. Going to Albany to receive the award in May, I think it is, sometime. So we're lucky to have this guy, in my opinion. So just wanted to point that.
This is
So we should be good at the end of May.
All right, I think we're gonna wrap it up. So thank you all for taking the time out of your schedules. I know it's busy, and we appreciate all of you. Thank you. Thank you, Zoomers.
Oh.
Yeah, the cookie case.